So again, if we're talking about lone actors, that's the thing, right? We pick arbitrary starting points. None of this is about the killing of teenagers or about a man or his child. All of that is a pretext. At the core of this, again,
it's about tunnels.
No, it's about occupation, Alan. There wouldn't be tunnels.
No, it's about tunnels.
There wouldn't be. No, it's not about tunnels. There wouldn't be tunnels if there weren't an open air prison.
Peter, go ahead. Peter, go ahead. Occupation.
In the absence of international censure of Israeli policies, thousands of activists have travelled to the West Bank and Gaza Strip. We attempt to break the isolation that Palestinians feel by representing, in a very small but potent way, an alternative face of the West, one of humanity and solidarity. We come to occupied Palestine to independently witness the realities of the occupation and to challenge the silence surrounding them. I decided to use my physical presence to try to minimize some of the brutality. The ability of activists to do this is possible only because of inherent racism. Our blood as foreigners is deemed less expendable than that of Palestinians, and we are less likely to get shot engaging in interventionist actions. It was an uncomfortable dynamic to work with, but I used it to intervene and negotiate with Israeli soldiers and to be present as a witness during invasions. When viewed from a comfortable context in the West, footage of activists standing in front of tanks can seem crazy and possibly suicidal, but it's a natural reaction to an unnatural situation. When you're surrounded by violence, it's a very human reaction to try to struggle for people to be allowed basic human rights. It's the only response, ultimately, that allowed me to retain my own humanity, too.
وكانت يعني شغلات كثير تصير تتدخل بيها، يعني يجي الجيش بده يطخ بده يضرب يقيم حط، هي تعرض حالها للخطر واحنا ننصحها نقول لها. يعني انا اكثر مره قلت لها الاجنبيه هي اللي صار اللي في غزه انه صار معاها هيك، هي تقول لي لا انا بالنسبه لي عادي، فيش حدا احسن من حدا، وانتوا انتوا بني ادمين زينا زيكم، يعني ما فيش فرق بين فلسطيني وفرق بين اجنبي ومسلم ومسيحي. وكانت تقوم شغلات كثير يعني بشكرها عليه كثير يعني فيش حدا كان يعمل زي ما هي بتسوي، مثلا تعرض حالها للخطر اكثر من مره، يعني يمر كل الجيش بدهم يطخوا علينا وتكفلهم يعني بوجههم تحكي لهم نازل تشتري خبز بدها تقيم بدها تحط، يعني نسوان اطفال صغار بدهم يمركوا بدهم يقيموا يحطوا، هي توقف قدامهم وتمنعهم. يعني مره مركت طفل صغير يعني طلع على دبابه لحقت دبابه فهي وقع على الارض، فهي مسكته واخذته على الجنب وكانت ما تخافش من اي شيء يعني، وانا بحترمها بشرفي يعني.
Has a responsibility, to stand by, not necessarily to stand up, not to be removed from the people, that you're trying to protect or trying to minimize the brutality that they suffer on a day-to-day basis in any way that you can, but to stand with them, to coexist, to live, to breathe, to exult in their strength, and to try and comfort them in the times, like the times that we're all living through now, in which people are suffering a level of pain, that most human beings, I think, would break underneath. Watch any situation like that tank moving up the hill, you see immediately those children know how to duck, they know how to get down, and this is what is keeping them alive, the self-preservation instinct. Even when the tanks aren't here, it's the uncertainty of when they'll come back into town, it's the uncertainty of, should you let your child go to school, because you don't know if he or she will come back home again alive. It's the uncertainty every time you say goodbye to somebody in the morning of whether they're going to come back to you walking or come back to you in an ambulance or come back to you dead.
Foot.
The tanks are coming. Sit down.
That's what strengthens Hamas so dramatically, because you discredit people who practice nonviolence and you lead people into Hamas's hands.
Let's look at. And when Israel abandoned and gave up the occupation of Gaza in 2005, there was no occupation. That was the response. And then in 2007, Olmert offered a two-state solution, and Abbas did not respond. 2001. And again, a two-state solution was offered, and Arafat refused it. So Israel has repeatedly offered a two-state solution. The process of negotiation toward a two-state solution is ongoing, but Hamas is sending rockets and sending tunnels, and this is a response to this form of terrorism. Hamas is hiding its terrorists among civilians. The entrance to the tunnels has been hidden by among civilians, and I haven't heard either of these two advocates against Israel's position denying the fact that Israel must close the tunnels, must stop the rockets, and Israel has offered over and over again, unequivocally, if the rockets stop and if the tunnels are closed, there will be peace.
Can you guys agree? Alan, let him talk.
Alan said something particularly disturbing. Human rights, dignity of the individual is not a Western value. It's a universal value. When people struggle for that,
I wish it were so.
That is a Gandhi was not from the West. Nelson Mandela was not from the West. I think it's very disturbing to describe these things in civilizational terms. Secondly, although I would love to see Israel get rid of all of Gaza's tunnels and weapons, it's simply not the case that you can credibly argue that if Gaza were to be demilitarized, as I would like it to be, that in fact Israel would be moving towards the two-state solution, because we've played this out in the West Bank. We have had for several years now a Palestinian leadership in the West Bank, Mahmoud Abbas, and before him also Salam Fayyad, who did security cooperation with Israel, who recognized Israel's right to exist again and again and again, and instead of getting serious negotiations towards a two-state solution, they have gotten the greatest settlement growth in Israeli history. And